Alright gamers, today I'm going to get my head on my metaphorical rum. And we're going to be talking about team building, alright? Now, I'm going to just get straight to the point. Team building in this game is probably not what you think, and you want to make sure you carefully pick each role of each character, so let's hop into it. Team building in this game is different to other various gacha games, as each character in this game has a designed role and or specialty, whichever you want to call it, as well as an attribute that also will affect what they do in their gameplay. In order to make sure everybody understands this, we need to cover a couple of things first, like what each element is doing and what each character role is doing. To put simply, all the elements, they do extra damage. Awesome. Now for the roles. The roles, each character role does a different thing. To start, we have the anomaly and the attack-based characters. These are two different archetypes of DPS characters. One that focuses on crit stats and building damage for their raw damage stat, and the other, the anomalies, being ones that build for anomaly stats and build for their anomaly or element damage procs on the enemy. The reason why this matters, and this is why it matters for elements specifically, is that different anomalies have different damage values for their elemental proc once you activate that anomaly, damage proc, right? This will change from whichever type, as to where fire will proc fire dot on the enemy, ice will allow the enemy to shatter, shock will apply shock to the enemy, ether will apply a corruption effect that's sort of like a dot, and it also makes some enemies attack each other, and physical is just one big hit of damage that also will apply extra days damage to the target. So when picking a character for anomaly, you're going to definitely want to make sure you look out for specific elements, preferably shock and physical anomaly characters. Those are going to be the strongest due to the interaction of multiple anomalies onto a target, proccing distortion. I do plan to do a further video talking about anomalies, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for whenever that comes out. But going with what I just said, that is going to be our damage dealer slot in the team. See, I'm going to structure this in a very simple way for people to understand. Most teams in this game are going to be ran in a simple manner. You have your damage dealer, your stun character, which this is the most important character on any given team for the most part, and your supportive character. Now you can mix and match to some degree, like running multiple anomaly characters in a stun character, or multiple anomaly characters in a support character, or you can just run a DPS and then two stunners, for example. This isn't something I would do. It's not really worthwhile. The main reason you run a stunner is just to get the days meter and get your max damage out. Past that, if you try running more than one stunner, you will definitely fall off in terms of overall damage, and it's not worthwhile. There is something worth of note though. The support kits in this game currently are very potent, and they can be ran as damage dealers and or additional damage on the side. So it's important to make sure you focus your resources accordingly for building each character that you want to build, right? I do definitely recommend though locking in on multiple stun characters, because you're going to definitely want one on each team. Or of course you can flex slot for an anomaly character to get a similar effect of a stun character. But moving forward, we have the defense character role. Now currently Ben is the only defense character role right now, and he works as a stunner, sort of. He's got pretty decent days damage, but not as strong as the other competitive stunners. Right now, defensive characters are in a weird spot because Ben doesn't do all that much, apart from buffing your crit and giving you a shield, while also doing decent days damage. So while he's a decent option, to properly evaluate this role, we're going to need more units to fill it out and see what the role of a defensive character will be. Maybe there is going to be more play for them in the future, but right now, defensive characters are not really sought after for in the meta and or as a role that you need to have for a team. Stun characters. I already mentioned how stun characters are the most valuable, and the main reason for this is the amount of days damage they do. And currently right now, stun characters have access to some of the most potent buffs in the current game. Right now, Von Lycan is the strongest stunner, and in fact, arguably the strongest character in the whole game, due to his impressive ice res down and his impressive stun damage, added on top of the fact that he increases the stun damage multiplier to any enemy that he hits. This is a very powerful bonus that no other character has anything close to. Except for like maybe Sakaku, but that's a whole nother topic. As stated, the main reason stuns are so important is because of the days damage they deal. They help you stun the enemy and get multiple chains attacks off, and this is the biggest DPS gain for any given team, being able to spam all your abilities in a fast manner and having the stun multiplier be very high on the enemy so they take way more damage. To put simply, if you have Ambi, which everybody does, you're going to be using her because she's going to be your free-to-play stunner until you get other stun characters to fit that role, preferably Lycan. Of course, Kaleda works as well, but her buff isn't nearly as potent as Lycan's, and in the future, if we get more stun characters, Kaleda's going to obviously fall off more in the meta in comparison to Ambi, who is a free accessible option for most players. And lastly, the final slot, and the slot that's going to be most important to boosting your damage overall, is going to be the support slot. Currently, there are 4 support characters in the game, and they're all very potent in their own right. My personal favorite, and one that is effectively the strongest, just due to the nature of her buffs, is Sakaku. She's providing each team with a wide variety of buffs and a very consistent basis, as well as doing damage on her own, as well. It's very easy to actually get access to her buffs and she can do damage on the side. And in fact, if you look at the multipliers, her damage is actually very comparable to some main DPS characters. Sukaku right now is so insanely potent that if you can run her, you are basically running her. It's just that simple. Alright, now that I talked about roles and I mixed in a couple other things, I'm going to mention the team structure. As stated previously, the typical team structure is going to be your main DPS, your stunner, and then your supportive character. Defensive characters can fit into whatever role you want there, but of course, we'll have to see going forward which defensive character is going to work in what role. The main thing you want to keep, as I've already said, is one stun character, and then fill out your slots with the other two being either a support or a DPS, or of course, this could be swapped out with anomaly characters accordingly. Now then, we're going to start with the actual teams and how, good they are. It's just that simple. Let's get into it. Starting off with the Ice team. The Ice team is currently the strongest team in the game due to the potency of buffs given by each character and the synergy between all the characters. Right now, that team consists of Ellen, Joe, Von Lycan, and Sukaku. This team is insanely potent as each character has various different buffs on them, where it's Lycan's 35% stun damage increase, res down with Lycan, Sukaku's attack buff, Sukaku's ice damage buff, and Ellen Joe's own ice damage buff. All these things stack together and they all proc each other's abilities due to the fact they're the same element, and it just is the most cohesive team right now in the game due to the fact of just how potent it is and how well the characters work together, and generally just how strong and potent Lycan is, right? Especially Sukaku. There is potential for Ellen, of course, to fall off as the key ICPS, as we do have characters like Mayabi in the future who share the same role, but as of right now, this is the most potent team, and it's going to age relatively well considering how strong the supports are. That being said, of course, if you don't have Lycan, you could sub out Lycan for one of the other stunners, being Ambi primarily, as she is the most accessible option, or Koleda if you do have her. I would suggest personally running Ambi because Ambi feels the most potent and consistent out of all of them, and you don't even need to worry about her passive. There's nothing funny going on there. You're not really missing out. She's just there to break the enemy, and this is going to be your most accessible and potent option, as she does do really good stun damage. Past that, and again, Sukaku is free, which is why you're going to want to use her. If you don't have Sukaku available or you're just a hater, of course you can use someone like Rina or Lucy. Rina does allow with a quick assist, just like Sukaku, and gives you a defense penetration buff. And Lucy will also give you some minions while giving a smaller attack buff to Sukaku, and you're also missing out on all the other bonuses. I know this sounds like a Sukaku Glaze session, but realistically, just use her. She's very strong. Next up, we have one of my personal favorite characters, Nekomata. Now, Nekomata is an interesting character as she doesn't have what I would consider her ideal teammates currently, but she does still have a very potent team. Right now, one of the best options for her is going to be Nekomata, Ambi, and then whatever support, probably Lucy. But Lucy, in my opinion, wants that second dupe, as Lucy does rely a lot on getting the damage bonus off, but you can't get that with your chain attacks until you get that second dupe. So again, that's going to be something here or there, but that's one of her better teams. Of course, you can also trade Ambi out for Piper, who's going to be a physical anomaly character who's going to allow you to proc the ability of Nekomata, her core ability. Additionally, this will allow Lucy to proc her core ability and give her minions crit bonuses. So this can lead to overall really strong DPS if you do run these three together, right? However, it's going to be the personal preference. I do kind of prefer the stunning ability of Ambi due to how fast and consistent she is. But if you do have a decently invested Piper, of course, technically you can get more overall damage via running Piper on the team and getting anomaly procs off, and then of course allowing Nekomata to get her extra damage off via her core passive from those anomaly procs. Other alternatives for this team are, of course, Lycan. Lycan always works due to how potent his passive is and just giving you straight damage bonus to stun enemies. He's going to be a shoe-in for Ambi if you do want to use him over, like someone like Piper or something in this team slot. Additionally, you can use characters like Nekomata or Sukaku, but they do have a bit less value there. Sukaku's still going to be potent, but again, you're not getting full advantage of her passive. This isn't really an issue due to the massive amount of attack she goes, but that's worth noting. And then, of course, Nicole, while very potent, will have a bit of energy issues, and you'll have to play around the fact that her debuff does not last very long and to maximize your damage. Other than that, though, Nekomata has a lot of team options, and look out for anybody who is a physical stunner or a physical defense character, perhaps, who could get a decent, buff for Nekomata in that regard. Or even physical support. Either one of those works. Soldier 11. Now, Soldier 11 is a very interesting character. She does have a bit of, timing to do if you want to make full use of her. However, you can, to some extent, ignore that with the right team setup. The team setup for Soldier 11 I'm going to recommend is, well, you probably guessed it, Soldier 11, Ambi, and Lucy. Now, Lucy here, being that Soldier 11 is Pyro, will automatically proc her full core ability, which is already going to be a nice damage increase from her minions. Outside of that, of course, Soldier 11 can sub in for Ben or Koleda. This will also proc those characters' passives and get their bonuses active, and that will work as a, pure fire team overall. It's going to be very potent. And like always, you can just sub in Lycan if you really do want to run him and, make use of his damage bonus. Otherwise, Soldier 11, pretty straightforward. Run all the fire characters together or sub in for whatever you need in that regard. This is going to be your general best option. Or, of course, if you are getting creative, or silly, throw in Sakaku if you really want to. Next on the DPS train, we have Anton, who is going to be our premier Electro DPS for the time being. He's probably going to get power creeped in the next update if we're being realistic. Besides the point, Anton, first team, what do you think I'm going to say? Yep, that's right, Anton, Abby, and then whatever support character you want. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Nothing much more to say there. Of course, if you don't want to run Abby in this case, or you've got one of the other stunners, you can run Anton, Ben, or Anton Koleda for the synergy between the Bellabog faction. And then for the support characters, one of the four, doesn't really matter who. If you do want to make full use of him, you can arguably use Arena due to the fact that she'll proc her passive and get more damage off. But this is going to be here nor there. All these characters are going to be about the same for him. There's also the sub variety option that you could do of running two DPS characters, running Anton and Grace. This is going to be a very potent combo on its own because Grace does a lot of shock damage, and Anton will obviously, apply a lot of shock as well and hit the enemy a lot. There's also a hidden tech with him where you can infinitely use his ability, so of course he'll be pretty good if you do use that tech. Outside of that, there's nothing, really notable about his teams. It's really just the same old. Run the DPS, run the stunner, and then run the support that you need to fulfill the role. Alright, if it hasn't been drilled in your mind yet, we have Corin's team. Guess what it's going to be? Yep, that's right, Corin, Lycan, and then some buffer. It's really just that simple. Outside of running the full Mei team of Corin plus Lycan and then any support, you can of course run Corin and another anomaly character. This isn't really recommended because Corin is going to be eating up all the field time and doing damage single targetedly in a burst rotation. But of course, running an anomaly character like Piper can fill in her slot and still proc the passive, as well as, account for any downtime. So it's going to be personal preference. I do think Corin's best option will be her plus Lycan and then whatever support you want to run. And that's just without question. There's really not much more to say there. As for the final traditional DPS, we have Billy. Now, Billy, it's quite simply, you're just going to run the Cunning Hares team. Billy plus Ambi plus Nicole is his pretty much most potent setup, as he is a very fast paced character who's going to be spamming his attacks a lot, right? Of course, you can make use of other characters like Koleda or Ben or even Sakaku for, buffing him. However, due to how he functions, you're definitely going to want to make use of his passive to get extra damage off. This is a big part of his overall damage, and he kind of needs this to actually be decent whatsoever. So running anybody outside of the things that activate his core passive will definitely be a negative. Right now, there isn't the biggest roster of physical characters. They're all TPS characters, so you can't really stack his buff in teams outside of the Cunning Hares team. However, if you do want an alternate option, you can just run him plus two other supports to just try to juice his damage as much as possible, but that's going to be up to the player. Right now, he just seems to be the weakest DPS. It just is what it is. Also, before we move on to anomaly characters, you may have heard me comment about putting Lycan in teams that even don't proc his passive. You can do that just for the stunning. However, teams outside of that, of course, other stunners will be just as good because it doesn't proc his passive. I just want to make that clarification in case anybody was confused why I say to put Lycan in every team. It's really just his stun potential, right? It's not the fact that he gets his passive in every team. If you do want to make use of a character that's going to get their passive in every team, well, I mean, there isn't one, right? There just isn't one. You can run Ambi if it's a team that doesn't, proc the passive. That's really just about it. To round off this video, we have the two current anomaly characters. So Grace is the current premier anomaly character, being she's the only 5-star option, and she will have a variety of team builds that consist of slapping Grace and Piper, and that's realistically it. Of course, I did mention earlier you can put Grace alongside Anton for, the shock team. However, this is not going to be what is the best aging team for her specifically. Her best team is going to be one where she prioritizes getting her anomaly procs off with another physical character. This is due to the nature of how physical anomaly works with shock anomaly to proc distortion, is it basically just gives you additional shock procs, but at one tick, right? So back and forth, you just keep spamming your procs, and they just do a bunch of damage. It's absolutely insane. And this is why I'm sort of bundling these two together, because their teams are going to be relatively the same. Of course, I already mentioned you can put Piper on teams with Nekomata, or of course you could run Piper as the sole DPS, being that she is physical anomaly. This works much better for, raw damage output due to the instant damage that you get from it. And so you can run Piper alongside another stunner plus Lucy. However, I'm definitely going to recommend the Distortion team between Grace and Piper. This is going to be their most potent option, just again, as I said, due to the fact that Distortion just gives you a ton of damage off when it's physical and shock, and this is the best bet. Of course, like I've been saying, if you don't want to run that, Grace does have alternate options like the full shock team of running Anton, Grace, and Rena, right, with whatever electric bamboo you want. But outside of that, her plus Piper is going to be the best. And then I'll reiterate, with Piper, it's going to be Piper plus whatever stunner and then Lucy as your best option, because you'll be able to proc Lucy's passive and get the extra, attacks off. And well, that's it for the main teams. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, you can mix and match a little bit with some characters, but pretty much every team is going to be running a stun character just due to how stun characters work, and you want to get that daze meter up for you to do your max damage and proc all your chain attacks. I will give an honorable mention to like mono support teams, or teams that consist of double supports, like running Lucy plus another support, such as Sukaku, to just stack damage buffs on top of them. Because again, the damage buff, or the damage potential of some of these supports is actually really good, like looking at Sukaku's multipliers. They're really solid, especially Lucy. Same scenario, solid multipliers. And you can stack some of these even with Nicole, as she gives you defense down. And so if you were to run like 3 supports, or even just 2 supports plus stunner, you'll be able to actually get pretty decent output with the support characters if you want to run them. It's not the recommended setup because a lot of times these DPSs do more damage, but there are a couple funny setups you can do with certain characters, that give themselves a lot of self-buffing, like, Sukaku in this example. Shout out to my minion army build, Lucy players. Good luck to y'all. So yeah, that's my team building guide. Definitely different than how I normally structure my videos, and not the way I originally wanted to put this, but I just thought I'd make it really simple and explain to you. It's like, this is how you're typically going to run every single character. Looking forward in the future, if you are looking for a specific character type, I would definitely look towards having a DPS of each element type. And if you want an anomaly team, primarily shock and physical anomaly characters. Like I've been saying, it's just due to how it works. Outside of that, the team building in this game is, relatively simple. Stack characters with their core act abilities together and pop off. That's really all I have to say there. Don't forget to stay tuned for more Zenless content in the future. I've been Gold Demon, signing out.